Live and in person at the Sacajawea Event Center here in Salmon, Idaho. And thank you to everyone virtually that is joining us tonight. My name is Mary Cernacek. I am a fire information officer with Great Basin Incident Management Team 1. And we are reporting out on the Moose Fire here on this lovely Monday evening. We have 126,925 acres on this fire that have burned. We are 37% contained, and as of this evening, we have 918 resources available. We are going to do this meeting both virtually and live, and in order to facilitate that, we have a list of experts here that will be able to take questions after a short presentation. So if we can allow them to get through their pieces, we'll see if a lot of the questions get answered during their presentation. Then I'll come back up and we will facilitate both virtual questions and in-person questions. And we'll explain that process as we get closer to that section of the meeting, but we will be asking you to use the microphone if you're in person. And with that, the first person I will introduce is our Field Operations Section Chief Trainee, Isaac Pounding.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Isaac Pounding, a Field Operations Trainee with Great Basin Team 1 with the current situation on the Moose Fire. So starting off over on the northeast or northwest side up in the Panther Creek and along on the north edge in the Salmon River corridor, all that is looking real good. Haven't had any issues in there, and we're feeling real good about all of that. That goes for the same all the way down here towards the Carmen area as well. Well, and where we're having our challenges right now is from the big run that happened a few days ago over here in the Wallace Creek. I'm going to say it wrong probably. Derriere Creek, Finster Creek, and then the Bob Moore and Jesse Creek areas. The fires made a pretty good run over there, and what that ended up doing is throwing a lot of spots out there in front. Resources, we spend a lot of time out there trying to find ways to engage on this. But with the amount of spots that are out there, with the critically dry fuels, as well as with the hazards of snags and stuff, it's posed a challenge for us. So what we're looking at, been doing in there is we got several hotshot crews up there working in this area. And basically right now we're looking at fighting the fire in the grass and the sage that's out there where it's more safe for our firefighters in that particular area. In addition to this edge over here, we got a lot of resources that you've probably seen them outside of town, working on the edge of town, working around structures, deploying hose lays, sprinklers, as well as doing some treatments around structures and for structure defense in case the fire does come down to that area. Most of that structure defense has been pretty much completed all the way down through the west side of Salmon. A little bit more is continuing down south. Additionally, we have put in a dozer line. It's kind of a mixed dozer line with roads, hand lines, all the way down the west side of Salmon, all the way down towards the Williams Creek Road. Moving up over into the Leesburg area, we do have quite a bit of fire up there, and it's kind of in the same boat as this fire over here. It's in real rough country, a lot of snags, and it's not set up real good. So what we've been focusing on is preparing the power line, as well as we put a line down in towards the Leesburg area, and resources are strengthening the east side of Leesburg with hose lays, sprinklers, and so forth in there as well. Moving up on the ridge top, we have been doing a lot. There's a bunch of log decks on there from previous year, as well as from some of the fire suppression actions from this year. So we got a lot of heavy equipment up on top, moving those log decks. For several reasons. One is to protect those values, but also in case we have to use some of this line up there to lessen the fire intensity in that particular particular area. Additionally, we've been using quite a bit of drones, UASs, to try to help us find some of these spots. These are the challenges we're having both on this east side as well as down here off the Leesburg area. And those drones have been somewhat helpful, but they don't pick up everything. And you're seeing the reason why out here. We've had some challenges trying to get aircraft to assist us just because of this inversion. And hopefully when this inversion does lift, it does provide that opportunity for the aircraft to assist the firefighters on the ground. I will say though, when or if this inversion does lift, you could see some potential increase in fire behavior, increase in smoke as well. Additionally, I'm sorry, I just lost track there. Oh, so the road, the Moose Creek Road, we're also doing some repair along that road right now. Some of the damaged fire suppression equipment and stuff that was in there, we're pulling that out and picking that out as well. And with that, I'll hand this off to Sheriff Penner.
Well, good evening. Just going to touch on the evacuation for a little bit and where we're at with that. And nothing is really, we haven't changed. The Zone 11 and Zone 1 are still in the go status. I think after the next few days, hopefully we get some favorable weather and we can reevaluate and see where we're at, and maybe we'll be able to downgrade those back into a set. Sorry, getting instructions here how to hold the mic. So with that, we do have the upgraded maps on Lemhi County, Idaho.org. If you go there, you can, the zones that are in SED and the zones that are in GO, they're labeled with the houses, and you can see the houses in the streets, so you can look and see and kind of where your house is at, or if you're even in one. And then the Code Red, I'm going to have Captain Bilby come up and give us a little instruction on how to sign up for the Code Red, because we've had a few changes with that. And I'll be over there afterwards if you have any other questions.
Hi everybody, I'm Captain Bilby. I work for the Lemhi County Dispatch. People seem to be having a hard time with the Code Red. I went in today and looked some stuff over. We have made it a lot easier to get on. You go to the Lemhi County website, and there at on the left-hand side of the page, when you go down, there's notices, and if you go there, it shows Code Red on the bottom. Click on that, it will take you directly to Salmon's logon. It will give you just Salmon. The other one on public online gives you the whole United States, which is very tough. I did print out a bunch of these flyers. They're over here on the table, and it tells you how to sign up, and it's step-by-step directions. It's the same as the last time that we talked. You just go to the bottom of the resident code, and it'll give you a resident sign up. Put all your information in. Don't forget anything. It will let you put up to 4 phone numbers on one residence, and you can put up to 4 residents per person, which is quite a bit. Some people have more than one residence. Also, when you sign up, you will get those Code Reds from the time that you sign up. These don't stay on there, but just 24 hours. They put a code in there that's 3, 6, 9, 12, and 24 hours. We're now making sure that those stay on there for at least 24 hours. If they don't stay on there and we need them again, we will just repost them. So, other than that, I think that's about it. If you have any more questions, holler at me. I'd be willing to help anybody if you need help, and I'll be over there. And this is Mr. Chuck Mark.
Well, good evening, folks. Chuck Mark, Forest Supervisor here in the San Marcos National Forest. Yeah, I was thinking a little bit tonight about what I wanted to say. You know, we're all tired. You know, this has been a long 2 months with this fire, the Moose Fire. It's been a long 2 months of smoke. It's been a long 2 months of heat. It's been a long 2 months of dryness, and it's impacted all of our lives. And none of us wanted to see this fire burn as large as it did for as long as it has. So we're all tired, and we're trying to see if we can see this thing to conclusion, and maybe we can here this week with finally getting some moisture, take some oomph, take some power out of this fire, and maybe we're on the downhill slide as we head into the fall. But we've still got work to do. I was up flying a couple days ago with Heather DeGeese, my deputy, and then with Isaac, the ops chief, and from my standpoint, that fire run we had last week shake anybody up. Shook me up, shook the team up, and certainly shook up a lot of folks on this side of the hill in and around the community of Salmon. And it'll do that to you, even if you expect it. It was no surprise that the fire did what it did, given the fire danger that's off the charts, fuel moistures that are so low, it's almost like kiln dried lumber. And then, this fire is moved every time the wind's blowing. When the wind blows, this thing starts spotting. We've had spotting up to, I think a lot of you have already heard, we've had spotting anywhere from a half mile, mile. The beginning of this fire back in July was 5 miles across the highway, across 93 on the east side. It's pretty difficult, if not impossible, with all of our technology, fire suppression resources, expertise, knowledge, and experience to do anything other than react, get people out of the way, try to keep everybody safe. And that's what we did. And from that standpoint, I'm pretty proud of what everybody's done up to this point. Our strategy has been very successful up to this point. Yeah, it's a large area. You get up to 125, 130,000 acres. That's a huge chunk of country. I would have liked to have seen a much smaller fire footprint. But we've looked at this area for quite a while. From south of the Salmon River Road down to Williams Creek, and we've still got a swath. We've got a swath all the way out to the middle fork of the Salmon that we've been concerned about if we would get an ignition in the wrong place, the wrong time, and then under the conditions that we've been under, and we did. It was a human-caused ignition. We still don't know who started it yet. Might never know. It was unfortunate. But I think we've done everything in our, I know my folks have. I know the incident management teams that have been in here. They've done everything in their power and within their capability to try to corral this fire as best they can. And we've done that on most, on the north side, within the main Salmon River corridor. We've done that over here on the east side, especially with the successful burnout operation, burning backfire that we put in the Diamond Line at least a month ago to keep it from moving towards Salmon at that point in time. We've pretty much corralled the fire into Panther Creek, where we've done some backfiring and took the oomph out of the fire, took the fuels away so the fire could not get up and run. And then, after my flight the other afternoon with Isaac and Heather, if I would say from this point, from the Leesburg Road on the 300 Road all the way over to the head of Trail Creek, we're looking good. So we have made some progress. But, I will say this, I've been in this outfit for 38 years. And most of my career has been in fire management one way or the other. We do not have the control that a lot of people think we have. Given our technology, our air tankers, our helicopters, our hot shot crews, our smoke jumpers, there's only so much you can do. I take very seriously. In fact, it's the most serious part of my job. It always has been. I've been a line officer for 17 years as a district ranger, deputy forest supervisor, and forest supervisor. When I've got to dedicate somebody's brother, somebody's sister, somebody's mother, somebody's father, somebody's daughter, somebody's son out there to try to suppress a fire, Keeps me up at night. And I've had more than a few sleepless nights over the last 2 months. And I take that job very seriously. I do not put resources on the ground or in the air unless I think they can be successful and we can reduce their exposure, the risk to their lives as much as possible. Those human resources are the most important things that are out there. So I know I'm taking too much time, so I'm gonna finish up my remarks and certainly will be more than willing to interact with folks and ask questions here afterwards. But, given the moisture we're probably gonna get some moisture. I'm pretty confident of that. I don't know how much we're gonna get, but it's gonna buy us some time. It's gonna buy us some days. We bought a lot of days to get to this point. I thought 4 weeks ago, a month ago, we would be fighting fire in this watershed. And we're there now. And again, nobody wanted to, I certainly didn't want to, nobody else wanted to be in this watershed, given the value that you can't even put a dollar figure on. There is no dollar figure you can put on the value of that watershed in regards to the drinking water that is supplied to here, the salmons. So we will continue to do what we can within our capabilities. And I think Isaac talked to that a little bit. But reality is, we're not in control. Mother Nature is in control. So we'll do as best we can, and when we get those opportunities where we can take the fire on our terms, we will do that. And we will engage. But we've seen when the fire does its thing on its terms, you don't want to be in the way. It's not worth anybody's lives to be in the way. So again, I appreciate folks that are here tonight. Appreciate the folks that are listening on Facebook, and look forward to further discussion, and we'll see where we go from here. So thank you. I want to introduce Evans Quo, the incident commander for the Great Basin Type 1 team.
Thank you, Chuck. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. As Chuck said, my name is Evans Quo. I'm the incident commander for Great Basin Team 1. You may remember us from our first tour here, the first 2 weeks of August. When I got the call last week that we were coming back up here, my first thought was, okay, yeah, I know that fire's really increased in complexity and intensity when it started making the run. But I was thinking, it's like, okay, we know the community, we know the ground, we know the terrain. We have, at least back in August, we understood the fire behavior and the weather. So yeah, I felt good about us coming back up here, knowing that we might be able to do some good. But then my next thought went to, we're like in week 8. And now we're in week 9. And so that was my next thought, that I recognized that we're coming into a community that's been dealing with the fire for 9 weeks now. And we can only imagine what you guys had to go through. Teams like ours, we bounce around the country. I mean, we started off in May down in the Southwest in New Mexico, and then we moved around as the course of the season, and now we're back up here in Salmon. And that's fine. That's where we need to be as the work requires it, so we'll come. The one thought a couple things I wanted to share with you. One being, why 9 weeks? Why is this a long duration fire? Why couldn't it have been picked up like on our first team, or the first time we were here back in early August, or why couldn't it have been picked up by the 3rd team that was here, or the 4th team, or now the 5th team? A lot of it has to do with the nature of indirect strategy. And when I say indirect strategy, I mean we can't engage the fire up close, and we have to be indirect or offset from the main fire's edge. There's a number of reasons why, which we can talk about, but indirect strategy has a tendency to be long duration because you have to either wait for the fire to come to you, or you have to do something with the unburned fuels between the control lines where we ultimately want to stop the fire and where the fire is. So how do we deal with the fuels that are in between? Well, there's 2 ways we could do it. We could either mechanically cut it up and remove it, but then what do you do with all that sheer tonnage of debris, trees, whole trees? How do you get it out of there? For those of you folks that are in the logging business, you know how long it takes to clear an acre of fuel or of timber. So is that the most effective, expedient way of doing it? Not necessarily. So what's another method? Well, another method is we put fire on the ground under controlled circumstances and we burn up those fuels. If all goes well, like has been a number of times on this fire on the west flank, the east flank, that's a viable tactic. So, but it all takes time, because if you burn under unfavorable conditions, you're not going to have good success. You're not going to have good results, and your ability to keep the fire inside the control lines goes way down. So what you try to find is the favorable conditions, but how often do you have east winds that would allow us to burn off the ridge road in this country? Most of your winds around here come out of the west, southwest, or northwest. And so our options there were very challenging. So the other factors that we had to consider was the extreme steepness of the terrain out here, and then also the history, the notorious history, I should say, that the Salmon River breaks have for large fire growth, fire spread, and getting people trapped, injured, and killed. And as you guys all know, back in July, we did lose 2 of our own, 2 very fine Americans. So just like Chuck, that's part of my duty. That's part of my job description is how do we minimize the exposure for our firefighters? And we have to come up with strategies and tactics that have the highest possible chance of success with the least exposure for our firefighters. And so threading the needle of trying to find that balance point between where can we be successful, not get anybody hurt in this such a challenging terrain, not to mention the fuels, which are record low moisture content, record high temperatures, very adverse conditions. So that is the reason why we had to end up going with an indirect strategy. And as a result, the inherent nature of indirect strategy means long duration. About a month ago when I was here, I think I talked to you guys about we prefer to go direct, honestly, whenever we can. We're basically right on the edge of the fire line. We can keep the fire small, we can do a lot of good there, and we can also provide for our safety, because while it sounds intuitively a little weird that being really close to the fire we could be safer, it's because we have access to safety zones. So we can just step into the area that has already been burned. But that only works in lighter fuels. That doesn't work in heavy fuels. A lot of this fire is subalpine fir and lodgepole. Of all the fuel types out there, that's one of my least favorite to fight fire in. Second off with the chaparral in Southern California. It's explosive, it's hot, it burns really intensely, and it also has a very high spotting potential. So spotting potential is basically when you see a tree burn from the ground all the way to the top of the canopy, we call that torching or crown fire. Especially subalpine fir, it lofts a lot of embers. Can't even begin to count how many embers. But imagine you're burning leaves or you're burning, paper in your backyard, and you see some of those things, they start to float through the air, the convective lift of the heat, and some of that, the leaves are still on fire. Well, imagine you got about 1 million of those coming out of a stand of subalpine fir in high winds. You're going to get a lot of embers blowing out ahead of the fire, and if those embers land in a dry receptive fuel bed, you're going to get spot fires, and that's how a lot of these fires spread. So if we were to get up close and go direct in subalpine fir type fuels, we might be able to stop the main fire, but then all those embers go up and over, and the fire plays hopscotch on us. So again, direct attack, even though it's our preferred, it's very challenging in this fuel type that we have here on this fire. So the other thing I want to talk about is fighting fire under an inversion. This is probably day 4 or day 5, I think. We've been socked in, especially right in the vicinity of Bob Moore Creek, Fenster Creek, Jesse Creek, where we really want to get in there and try to do something with that flank. This inversion has been pretty thick, and I guess maybe I should back up a little bit. So everybody understand what an inversion is. Normal temperature profile, it's warmer down here, and then as you go up in elevation, it gets cooler. Like when you say you drive up Stormy Peak Road, it's 90 degrees down here, but by the time you get up on the ridgetop, it's a good 15 degrees cooler, because the normal temperature profile in the atmosphere is it gets cooler as you go up. An inversion occurs when you have cool air at nighttime. Cold air goes downhill or down, and hot air goes up, right, like a hot air balloon. So you get that cool air coming down, but then you have warmer air trapped above it. And that warm air creates a layer which keeps all that smoke and everything else trapped in the valley. And that's why we call it, the temperature profile is inverted. And that's why we call it an inversion. So you see it pretty commonly in the wintertime, especially when you got all the wood stoves going in town. You get the cool air coming down at night, but you have a warmer air layer on top. It acts like a lid on a pot. And it just traps all that wood smoke in the valley. Well, imagine 15,000 acres of fresh burn, all those emissions trapped by a cap of warm air above us. probably several thousand feet up, holding all that smoke in the valley. That's the inversion we've been dealing with. So we've been getting some questions. Why aren't we running more helicopters? Why aren't we running more air tankers on this thing to try to keep it from coming down the slope, or even more into the watershed? And the reason being is, well, first off, if you're a pilot, if you can't see it, you can't hit it. Okay, so when visibility is 100 yards or so, and you're kind of trying to fly there with a bucket that's hanging about 100 feet below you, and you're trying to use your depth perception and using the ground as your visual indicator, if you can't see the ground or you can't see the height, the ridge top, then not only is your accuracy going to go way south, but it also creates an extreme hazard to the pilots. So we have standards, and all those standards for flying in visibility conditions they're bought and paid for in blood. We've lost people by asking them to fly in some very adverse conditions. So imagine, I'll give you a visual. Take about 6 feet of string or even 4 feet of string, tie it to a Dixie cup, and walk around your house with all your precious valuables scattered around the ground, like your valuable china. Put a blindfold on and try not to step on anything that you don't want to lose while you put that bucket or that Dixie cup exactly on the target. Pretty challenging, right? So these pilots that we have, pretty experienced, pretty good, but like I said earlier, if they can't see it, they can't hit it. Okay. So that's why we have been running a lot of aircraft, and that's also prevented us from operations, from flying a reconnaissance over that area to find all the spot fires that Isaac's been talking about. We do have infrared technology that's been able to find the big spots, but the little ones that we don't know about, those are the ones that cause me concern, because if we engage our crews right on the main fire's edge, and then the inversion lifts, all of a sudden, and then all those spots that we didn't know about, if they're downhill of the crew, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to flare up, and they're going to start burning up the hill, and potentially trap our crews. Kind of like Chuck said, that's a hard no. If we cannot provide for their safety, then we're not going to ask them to go in there. So right now, like Isaac said, we think our best bet is to try to catch the fire below, where the timber transitions more into open grass and sage. And for a number of reasons. One is it's lighter fuels. It'll be easier going, which means a lot faster progress, a lot higher probability of success, or less likelihood of losing it. And then the other thing is, out in the grass and sage, it's a lot easier for us to find the spots, as opposed to in some of those deep, dark timber stands that are out there. So that's one of the reasons why we're even though the inversion has kind of kept a lid on the fire, that's why we have not been able to do some of the things that you'd want us to try to do. Whether or not the weather that's coming in will change that, we're going to be watching that closely, and if we do get some decent moisture, then we're going to constantly be evaluating, assessing the hazards and the risks out there. So more to come on that. Speaking of weather, you guys all probably been watching the news, or you understand that we got a little bit of moisture coming in. So the good news and bad news, the high pressure system that's been sitting on top of us is starting to move out. It's moving off to our east, and so the good news is it's getting rid of all that really hot, dry conditions that we had leading up to the fire when it made its big run. We got a low pressure system coming in behind it, which means we're probably going to start to see more increase of northwest winds, and northwest winds, not the most favorable for that flank, because that would then push it in the direction we don't want it to go in. So we're watching that weather transition very closely with that frontal passage as it comes in. But here's the positive. That low pressure system is helping draw up the moisture that is the remnants of Hurricane K that's off the Baja coast in Mexico. And we're already starting to see signs of some pretty significant rainfall farther to the south, but that rainfall is expected to move its way north and come into our area about late Tuesday into Wednesday. The big question is how much? And I mean, at this point, we'll take any, right? We'll take whatever we can get. But like Oliver Twist says, thank you, sir, but may I please have some more? So however much we get may make a difference for us, or it might just kind of put the fire in pause for a little bit, and then on the backside of this low pressure system, if it does get hot and dry again and windy, then we're back off to the races. So Operations task or challenge is to figure out a way we can go in and secure the fire either where it is currently on the hillside or maybe a little out in the grass, mid-slope. And if that we're unsuccessful in holding it there, then we look at the dozer line that they're putting in at the bottom of the or towards the bottom of the slope. How far we have to go south, well, that's going to have to play out and see. Ultimately, we're prepared to take it all the way to Williams Creek Summit Road if we have to, and I recognize that's a really ginormous chunk of ground to give up. But we've been looking for a good way to go from the bottom back up to the ridge road again. And frankly, because of how steep the country is, we have not found a really good ridge. I mean, we're looking for another ridge like what we put the diamond line. And unfortunately, we have not really been able to locate a good one where we feel like we have a good enough chance of success. So you hear us talk about probability of success a lot, and you also hear us talk a lot about risk to firefighters. So maybe I ought to probably spend a minute or so and explain what we mean by that. So probability of success is, well, as it implies, what is the likelihood that we're going to be successful and be able to put a piece of line in, burn it out, and hold it under the conditions that we expect? That could go up and down quite a bit, but right now we're not finding anything that's anything higher than a moderate likelihood, and moderate is not all that great because a lot of those country, as steep as it is, it puts firefighters at even higher risk, and risk is the probability and consequence. So the likelihood of somebody working in a snag patch, and there's quite a few snags on a lot of those ridges, dead trees that are fire weakened or weather weakened, if they fall and hit somebody, that's pretty catastrophic. We could either really seriously injure somebody, so it's a life-changing event, or death. And we have had a bad history of that in the past, of asking firefighters to work in snaggy areas. So if you think about it, if we don't fight fire in snaggy areas, what's the likelihood of that happening? It's pretty low, right? If we have them work in areas where it's mostly healthy timber, not as many snags, then yeah, it's the likelihood of them getting hit by a snag is pretty low, and in which case we don't have to worry about the consequence. But if we put them in a snag patch, the likelihood starts going up, probably pretty high. And that's just not something we can, well, I have a hard time looking at myself in the mirror, let me put it that way. I've gone to too many funerals over the years. So if you combine moderate likelihood of being successful with high risk to firefighters, that's not a very good equation. What we're looking for is a ridge or a way to cut this fire off where we have a very high confidence that we could be successful and a manageable level of risk to the firefighters. We don't want to go high risk or high probability of failure and high risk to the firefighters, because that's just, well, frankly, that's just dumb. So it's not something we want to really engage in. So I hope that helps understand a little bit more about where we're coming from. The one thing I think we are going to have to live with for a while at least is we have fire right now in Jesse Creek, which you guys all know is the northwest corner of your municipal watershed. Right now, based on what Isaac is telling us, is it's on top of the ridge to the south of Jesse Creek, and it's starting to work its way downhill into Turner Gulch, the next little side drainage to the south. There is a rock band about the lower third of that hillside, which might slow it down, depending on the burning conditions it's under. But if we combine the potential chance that we're going to get some moderating weather, like precipitation, with that rock band, okay, we might be able to live with that. But right now, engaging it close, remember how I was talking about snags earlier? It's about at least 40 to 50% snag component on that hillside right in there. So in other words, out of every 10 trees, 4 or 5 of them are man killers, widow makers. People call them too. So that's not going to happen there either. So, but if the fire does move out into some better country, maybe we might be able to take advantage of it if we get out of the snags a little bit more. So, like I said, a lot of these things of how we approach that fire in the watershed, it's going to have to see how it plays out, and then try to take advantage of some of the things we can do. We have been talking to the city, the water board, as well as the city administrators about potential actions we could take in there, which also include us deliberately putting some fire on the ground, and that will probably be something that we'll have to make a decision on depending on how we see what the weather does, because if the weather comes in, we won't be able to burn. But if we get back into a kind of a hot, dry scenario, I think if we do any burning, the goal will be to reduce that intensity of that fire. And you might ask how we plan on doing that, which is a very legitimate question. Let me just say that fires, when they run uphill, they burn at a lot higher intensity, a lot higher severity, which means they will most likely cause a lot of damage and downstream effects such as erosion and mudslides, which is not desirable in a municipal watershed. But if we can get the fire to back down the hill, now that's a little bit different equation where we might be able to leave some trees that are still alive, some enough vegetation on the hillside, or some logs that are intact, which can help hold the hillside together and prevent that erosion. So we're getting a little bit into the science of fire and some of the tactics that we employ, but we can do more explanation later. But just think of it as light a kitchen match and hold it straight up so that the burning end is up. You watch that match burn very slowly, and it just slowly works its way down the match until it gets close to your fingertips. That matchstick is still recognizable as a matchstick, even though it's black, okay? But you light that same matchstick and you hold it upside down, what happens? The whole thing burns, and instead of a 1/2-inch flame, you have like a 2-inch flame, and it burns at higher intensity. That's the same principle. We don't want head fire. We don't want the fire to make a hard run up the hill, but it might be okay to let the fire back down. So if we have an opportunity to do something like that, then to make the fire effects not as bad in the municipal watershed, that might be one of the tactics we employ down the road. But, how much time? Are we doing okay on time? Okay. I just want to say one more thing. Every now and then I pop on and take a look and see what the social media comments are saying, just trying to get a pulse from the public, and also so we know what to focus in on our some of our information sharing. I've seen a number of comments from people kind of not being so nice to the people that were involved in the initial attack on this fire. Comments about, I don't know, just ranging from armchair quarterbacking to saying that they were incompetent. I've listened to the initial attack incident commanders first 72 hours multiple times now, and under the conditions that they were trying to fight this fire in, the steepness of slope, the winds, the fuels, I don't think that's warranted. I really do not. They hit it with everything they had. They hit it hard. They were aggressive. On this forest, there are some places where it's 100% full suppression. Other places, yeah, we have some opportunity in the wilderness to do other things with fires. But in that country, that's full suppression. That's by policy. They hit it with everything they had. Unfortunately, Mother Nature was not on their side that day. Very similar to what happened to Team 5 when Mother Nature decided to throw 55-mile-an-hour winds at this fire and caused a lot of spotting, and it made that 9-mile run and burned another 15,000 acres. Even if we'd been there, the outcome would have been the same. So I guess what I'm saying is the people that were involved in the initial attack, they fought their hearts out. A lot of them are also local. They're members of your own community. They're vested in that country up there. It's killing them that this fire is now 125,000 acres. So a little bit of grace, I think, might be in order. So, all right, thank you very much. I'll give it back to Mary.
Thank you, Evans. So now we're going to move into our question and answer section of the meeting. So if anyone here in person has a question, you need to raise your hand so Karen can get you the microphones. We'll be able to hear you. Otherwise, we've got one question that came in online, and that is, can you tell us a little bit about the burning at Wallace Lake last week and what it looks like?
So the fire did make a significant run across Wallace Lake. It did have a pretty high impact on it. However, so it took out some of the campgrounds, but a lot of them on the north end still stayed. There are still some green trees in that. all around the lake itself. A lot of those trees seem to have survived that fire that went through there. And additionally, the bathroom facilities and several of the picnic tables are still intact as well.
Thank you. And watching for sound okay? And we're watching for some more questions. Just to let you know who we have available, we do have Sheriff Pinner here to talk about any questions you might have around evacuations. We have some folks that can talk to you about the smoke and the predicted weather. We have some local forest experts on hand to talk about any other questions you might have about anything here on the Salmon Chalice. And a question in the front.
This is probably a Sheriff Penner question. I live up on the Bar Hill on Porphyry Street, and I guess I'm wanting to know what evacuation zone that's considered.
So in Porphyry, you're not in one right there.
No, I know I'm not now, but could that potentially be an evacuation zone if the fire comes down into the houses?
We really don't think so. I mean, you're far enough in that when we drew those up, we kind of based that a lot on, well, the fuel types coming in and hitting the edge of the town and that sort of thing, and what is easy to defend and what might be a little bit harder. So I think you're probably in pretty good shape right where you are. I'd sleep fine if I was living on Porphyry Street right now. So.
Thank you.
And we have another question. We'll give Karen a minute to walk to the back.
Yeah, my question is for the Forest Service supervisor. Are you guys going to work with the loggers in clearing out some of these fuels that you guys have let grow, and we have a tremendous resource out there that's going up in smoke where we could have possibly utilized it prior to this and in the future to go ahead and do thinning where it's necessary?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the question. So, bear with me, a couple of ways I would answer that. One, it's taken us over 100 years to get into this situation. We've been putting out fires for over 100 years. And so, we've created a tremendous amount of this fuel situation is on us. And so, a couple decades, 30, 40 years isn't going to get us out of this. It's going to take that, it's going to probably take that long to be able to deal with this fuel situation. So I'll speak to the challenges since I've been here. This is my 10th fire season here on the Salmon Chalice. And, the forest products industry that, and this isn't unique to the Salmon Chalice, this is unique to the West. We've lost a lot of our forest products into infrastructure and industry. And we don't have the capacity to be able to do some of the things that I would like to see us do. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't utilize timber harvest, silviculture, to be able, especially in and around values at risk. We need to do that. But there's no one solution that's going to get us out of this. It's going to be necessary in regards to being able to utilize timber harvest and thinning, especially in regards to values at risk, to be able to live with fire. We're going to have to use fire to help us in combination with timber harvest. And then, let's face it, we're being outpaced right now by wildfires all across the western United States. And from that, the scale of the treatments that we are, putting, frankly, they're postage stamps last 40, 50 years. When a fire spots, and, Evans talked to it, when a fire spots a mile, 2 miles, those treatments aren't going to do anything. So yes, to answer your question, we need to do more. We need to somehow invigorate our timber industry again. I don't have all the answers. A lot of that is outside of my control. You know, it's an economic thing. It's got to pay. You got to be able to have the wood pay to get out of the woods. Since I've been here, the larger timber sales that I've had, you know where they go to Montana. That's where the forest, what's left of forest products infrastructure. Yeah, we can cut firewood, we can cut post and pole sales, and that's great for people, for folks to utilize the products that are out there, sitting on the stump out in the woods. But in regards to dealing with the fire behavior that we're dealing with on this fire, wouldn't do anything. So I'm not trying to be ambivalent. We need to do more. We need to be more proactive, but we also need to acknowledge reality. We're getting outpaced right now, and so we've got to somehow, some way, figure out how we can catch up through the combination of tools that we have in our toolbox. I hope that helps. It's not a solution necessarily.
Okay, we've got one more question here, and then we'll move to our breakout tables.
Someone mentioned the fact that there would be a potential for someone mentioned the fact that there might be a potential for the fire to back down to the south, maybe even as far as Williams Creek area. Do you have any clue as to how far to the east or southeast that might back down? I mean, could it come down into the residential area of the, like Crab Creek, Williams Creek?
Good question, ma'am. We're still trying to figure that out. So there's a lot of uncertainty that we're dealing with up here. It's how much is this fire going to grow here in the next 3 weeks that we have remaining, most likely before you guys start to see the onset of fall. I will say that the last 5 days, even though, thanks to the inversion, our sometimes friend, sometimes not friend, thanks to the inversion, this fire has probably only grown maybe 200 acres, I'd say, in the last 4 or 5 days, because that inversion acted kind of like a damper on your stove. If nothing bad happens before the rains come in, I would anticipate that, based on what the incident meteorologist is telling us, we're probably looking at 5 days of some pretty calm weather with possible shots of moisture multiple times. No significant growth will occur probably through the weekend. Now we're into, the 16th, 17th of September. Now we have 2 weeks left until October, okay? So what kind of weather can we get in that last 2 weeks of September, which would cause this fire to really wake up and start pushing down the hill hard in ways that we cannot deal with? It's there's a little bit of odds here. So if it does start doing that. Help. Okay, thank you, Ernie. Okay. Needing technology. What was I saying? So if it does start to push down, that is where the line that we've established all the way from, up in the Diamond Creek, Savage Ranch area, all the way around the west side of town, around the water treatment plant to exclude it all, down to the south, all the way to Williams Creek Summit, that is our, that we will stop it there. If we find an opportunity, like we find another good ridge like Diamond Line is, and we can mitigate all the hazards, then we might try to do something a little bit closer, but honestly, we have not found it yet. And if we haven't found it yet, it probably is not there. It's not like it's hiding. So if we have to take it all the way down to the Williams Creek Road, we're prepared to do it. We have the right resources to accomplish that. But if we don't have to, we don't want to put all that fire on the ground if this fire up in Jesse Creek and Turner Gulch just kind of stay up there because the moderating weather kind of just keeps it up there. Does that help?
It does, thank you.
All right, you bet.
Okay, and to give some of our folks a heads, we're going to squeeze in one more question.
Okay.
What have you got?
Thank you. Well, thank you for taking care of the lives of the firefighters. I have a very dear friend who's a firefighter, and I appreciate that a lot. We don't want to see any more deaths here either. So thank you very much for that, and I just wanted to say that.
I couldn't thank you for a better way to end the meeting. Appreciate that. So For folks that are a little more on the shy side, we are going to have experts that are available at the various tables so that you can talk to some of our experts one-on-one, the other subject matter experts that are here to take your questions. Besides the Forest Service, we have someone from the Owl and Horse Creek fires. We have your county resources. We have folks that can talk to you about smoke. So we do have those available, and we will be putting answers to the questions that we get at these breakout sessions also online so that you'll have access to that information as well. And we anticipate holding another meeting this week. We'll be getting more information out in our news releases about those upcoming meetings. Can we run that mic? Yeah. We're going to take another question.
Okay, I just have one quick question, and I guess that would be for the Forest Service super. So since, this is a long time coming of a problem, what do I need to do? Come forward?
Yeah, you're way in the back.
There we go. So my question is, are we going to open up our roads and everything so that we can get back in there to these areas that have been cut off from the public, where the roads have been shut down and tilled up and stuff? Will we be able to have access to that again? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. So a couple ways, again, that I will answer that is, one, yeah, we've got places we've identified where we'd like to reduce fuel loadings along the roadsides. And so, yeah, we started doing that a couple years ago. We're going to continue to do that. But again, the reality is you got to think about the scale of things also. When you look at some of the fire behavior, fire spreading growth that the Moose Fire has exhibited over the last 2 months, those types of, we get folks in there to, cut firewood, cut posted poles, the fire's going to jump right over the top of the roads. So, but to answer your question, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that concludes the live event portion of our meeting, and we'd be happy to join you. We have the Forest Service here, we have Fire Incident Management Team here, and over here on the far side, we have your county and evacuation information. Thank you so much.